Hi everyone, welcome to this NoraBox webinar. We are doing a deep dive today in an issue which is incredibly important. It is arthritis. And we are joined by a wonderful individual, Leah, and I'll explain who she is and introduce her in a moment, but she is from the brilliant charity Arthritis Action. So it's great to have your company for what is a huge issue that maybe we don't speak enough about. We guesstimate there's about 10 million people in the UK who live with arthritis, and they're just the folks we know about. So we're going to get into this really important issue. But before we do, a huge welcome to you. My name's Donna Stevenson. I'm sometimes lucky enough to host these how-to webinars. So today is my chance to meet with you all. I've got shoulder length brown hair. I'm wearing a wonderful grey NoraBox t-shirt. You may see as we go through, I'm also drinking from a wonderful NoraBox mug, everyone. So it's lovely to have your company. I'm head of training, but as I say, it's my honor to host these sessions every now and again alongside some of my other colleagues. And today is an issue close to my heart because I've got lots of folks in my family who live with this difference. So let me introduce our wonderful expert. We are joined by Leah Boylan. She is Head of Services Engagement at that wonderful charity, Arthritis Action. It is a national organisation serving the arthritis community. Leah, firstly, thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hi everyone. My name's Leah and I work for Arthritis Action. So I'm looking forward to speaking to you more today about arthritis and the impact that it has and how that can kind of be mitigated, particularly in the workplace, and debunking any myths and seeing how we get on. And hopefully you've got some great questions too.
Yeah. Thank you, Leah. And we'll get into it in a minute because we've got a lot to unpack here. This is a big issue. But as Leah says, everyone, we welcome your questions. Either those of you who are live, you can use the chat or the Q&A box. We're quite lucky on Zoom. We've got different kinds of places that we can put information. And I'll keep my eye on as we go through the conversation with Leah. If you're listening to this on catch up, please reach out to us. So we'll have contact details for Arthritis Action. And of course, us at NoraBox, we can either answer or signpost to our wonderful friends over in the charity as well. So lots of ways that you can ask and keep in touch. Sadly, today we won't be giving medical personal advice. That's not what today is about. Today is about giving advice about the workplace, answering questions about this very misunderstood condition as well. Okay, so let's get into it then. Leah, can you take me right back to the beginning for those of us who aren't sure? What is arthritis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So arthritis is a condition that affects the joints. I think literally it means inflammation of the joints. But within the term arthritis, so it's good to think of arthritis as being an umbrella term for lots of different conditions. So I think there's actually about 100 different types of arthritis. So everyone would experience it differently. So some people might have osteoarthritis, some people might have rheumatoid or inflammatory arthritis, and that's where the lots of different types come from. There's lots of different types of arthritis that are inflammatory. Obviously, I can't list them all today,
Yeah.
but I think it does a really great job at highlighting that everyone's symptoms will be different. Everyone will experience arthritis differently. It's not a linear journey with like a one size fits all approach. It's more about finding a personalized approach that works for you, of how you self manage that, and that might change within weeks or months or years, and kind of having that open mind that it is a long-term condition that can be managed rather than cured. So it's about kind of controlling the symptoms and the pain.
Yeah, thank you. And as you say, I think that will surprise folks to know that there are a number of categories of arthritis, and arthritis is that kind of umbrella term. I'd said to you a little bit earlier that at some point in the conversation, we were probably going to talk about the arthritis under our Equality Act is classed as a disability. And I think right out the gate, this is probably a good time to say
Mm.
that to everybody. So please speak to that so that we've got nice and clear that if you're living with arthritis, it is classed as a disability. Leah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Definitely, and it's a disability that affects so many people. I think it's about 1 in 6 people. So most people will have arthritis. They might not be diagnosed, but they might have symptoms or might be looking into it. And I think with any disability, whether it's arthritis or it could be something else, it's really important to find that voice to advocate, kind of to make your life much more comfortable, particularly if you are in the workplace and you're not quite sure how to go about that. There's lots of adjustments that can be made to kind of make your daily quality of life or work life better.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, this has started the great kind of foundations for our conversation. So we know then what arthritis is. We know that it is classed as a disability. So let's move on, I think, to related issues about, I think because, and I don't quite know how we've got to this place. As you say, 1 in 6, that's a heck of a lot of people who live with this condition, but it still seems quite mysterious to a lot of us, and we don't understand necessarily what it is. And because of that, there's a lot of myths and
Mm.
misunderstandings. So let's get into some of those. I think probably one of the key areas is maybe the age groups. I think a lot of people associate arthritis with older folks. Now, we know that's still a huge issue. We know that we've got an aging workforce. Older people are more likely now to be in work. Brilliant. They've got so much contributions to make. I'm in this category myself. But it's actually not necessarily something that 40 plus year olds are experiencing as well. Again, please share on that.
Yeah, well, arthritis impacts people of all ages, children, people, teenagers, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way up. And I think that's the biggest misconception is that the stereotype is it affects maybe people in their 70s or 80s or people who are very old or frail, when that's just not, it's not true. But I think it's about kind of battling that stereotype is very, very difficult to kind of get to the point of diagnosis or even recognize that the symptoms you're having might be related to arthritis, because we speak to lots of different people daily of all different ages, and the one thing that kind of younger people have all got in common, unless they were perhaps diagnosed when they were children, that's often a different kind of a different thing altogether. But people kind of in their 20s, 30s are often told, oh, they're too old, they're too young, sorry, to
Mm.
have arthritis, or it can't be. Is it an injury? Is it related to something else? And I think from that, it's actually much harder to advocate. Whereas if you're older, the flip side of that, people are saying, oh, it's just arthritis. You've got to find ways to manage it. So I think it's getting there and getting the support, I think, is half the battle. And then we find that if people are younger, they kind of have to, they feel that they have to kind of prove their condition, or they're kind of constantly having to justify that it's arthritis and then having to explain what the condition is and how it affects them. And I think that in itself can become exhausting and difficult.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because I think for a lot of us who don't know a great deal about this condition, um, this idea now that you share about for younger folks, they've also got the barrier of having to almost prove to the medical profession this is actually arthritis. And then we've got almost the flip side, Leah, from what you said. It's so insightful. And I've not even thought of this myself. And I think I've said this to older
Mm,
relatives actually myself. Oh, it's just a bit of
mm,
arthritis. It's part of being
yeah,
older. So we flip from these kind of
mm,
different ways that we address this condition. And I don't know if there's many other conditions who have almost this type
mm,
of stereotyping and misunderstanding around
mm,
it in such a profound way, really.
mm,
Um, for our neurodivergent community, obviously at Neurobox, we are passionate about supporting our neurodivergent community as well as the disabled community. And we talk a lot about intersectionality. And I think age is an issue that there's an intersectional relationship with arthritis
mm,
and for younger folks and older folks and so on. But I'm also thinking for the neurodivergent community as well. And I know I've worked with people, I've got friends in the neurodivergent community as well who'll say to me, it's a nightmare sometimes navigating through the medical maze that sometimes we find ourselves in. And that's no disrespect to our wonderful health service, but it can be quite complex
mm,
sometimes. And as a neurodivergent person, it's tough to navigate through. And then we've got this layer that, yeah, I'm navigating through with arthritis and so on. Have you had any experience of folks speaking to you guys as a charity in those ways? Leah, about being
Yeah.
neurodivergent and also living with arthritis?
Not so much people who are neurodivergent
Yeah.
and living with arthritis, but the one thing we kind of do get a lot is not knowing where to go. So you have
Oh,
these symptoms, kind of what's next, but like you said, there's so many different services to navigate. Like, who do you actually talk to? Do you need a referral to rheumatology, or do you need to see a physiotherapist, or a pharmacist, or your GP, or an occupational therapist? And I think it's very overwhelming. I think there's so many different places that you can go. It's like that uncertainty of, well, what do I do, or do I wait it out and think, will the pain get better? What's causing this? So that's something we get on a daily basis, is that kind of confusion, and that can impact anyone, and it's very hard. um, but yeah, I think it's navigating the system is very complicated, particularly if you have more than one condition. So you're navigating something for one thing, and then you've got to do it for another. You're being told kind of what are your pain markers, but then you think, well, what am I comparing this to? So it's not an easy system to navigate.
yeah, thank you for sharing those insights again. I think the journey from what you've already shared, and we're just getting into this conversation, it mirrors a lot of actually what neurodivergent folks will say as they're navigating through an identification journey or trying to get the support in where there's parallels here, Leah, very similar echoes across the
Mm,
communities in that way. And similarly, for the next part of what I would like us to chat about, which is the workplace, the impact, how these issues may manifest at work, and also how it impacts on us as people. Again, very
mm,
similar conversations that we have in the neurodivergent community. So please share about, from your own experiences and the great work you guys do. What are you seeing as the impact within the world of work for this community?
mm. So arthritis and work, it's a difficult area to navigate, because people obviously with arthritis, you might have your symptoms, but they're not linear. You might be going for a flare up, or you might be fine for a little bit, symptoms might increase. So it's really hard to navigate that and to perhaps put something concrete in place for a condition that might be kind of ever changing. I think in terms of people who have arthritis and are in work, I think 42% have found that it impacts their work negatively. And within that, I think you have about 27% who kind of find it hard to not have that fear of judgment that their arthritis will impact their work, whether that's from their managers or colleagues. And that's something that we find that a lot of people try like hide their condition and think, oh, I'm fine, I can get on with it. But that gets to the point where that can only take you so far. And then by the time you've told somebody what's what's happening to you, it's kind of like it's very hard to put those adjustments into place. Whereas we find having those kind of open conversations, as difficult as that can be, and kind of put those steps in early, but with the understanding that in a few months it might look different. And that's really important, is that everyone has their own individual journey with arthritis, and you can't just say, oh, my this one colleague has got, say, osteoarthritis in their hips, somebody else has perhaps got psoriatic arthritis. They're going to have a very different journey, so you can't kind of compare, you can't contrast, it's very individual. And I think that's where the difficulties lie, because it's not just, you can't just take some paracetamol and it will be gone. It's about putting those steps in place to make things easier, but also having the confidence to voice what you need. And that can be, particularly if you're new at work, or you've got a new job, or you've been diagnosed a bit later on and you've had the same job for a long time, how you work will then kind of have to change. Yeah, it's a difficult place to be.
Mm. Again, it's very moving to hear you speak in this way, and for sure, that lived experience, it's got so many layers to it about
Mm,
what you're going through, the pains, but then how you're being treated, and that those barriers that folks are experiencing. I can only imagine then, Leah, the impact all that has on somebody's emotional and psychological well-being and where they're at in their life. So again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what are you hearing from the community about how this impacts on us as human beings.
Yeah, and I think a good thing to recognize is that mental health and physical health are linked. So
Yes.
the more kind of stress, if you're under a lot of stress, that might be more likely to increase your pain or your symptoms. That's something we hear a lot. And I think you go from doing your job, but then you think, well, on top of doing my job, I've got to manage all my symptoms at work. And if you're
Yeah.
hiding those symptoms, that's an added stress because you're in pain, but you can't show that you're in pain, or you might have to commute, but even just getting out of bed might be difficult, for example. And that's something we find that emotional kind of hardship, it adds up, and then it gets to, for some people it might get to boiling point, and then you think, well, I don't know what to do. And I think some people have a fear as well, which I think increases, is that if you have any disability, you think, well, I can't do my job, what are they
Yeah.
going to do? Am I going to be sacked, whatever, I don't know. And that pressure is really hard, and I think some of that does, I think, come from the employer to kind of have an open, inclusive environment where people do feel able to voice their views, or if they might need some reasonable adjustments or anything further through, say, the access to work fund. Everyone will be different. But I think having that culture where it's possible for to kind of just take that level of stress away, not just for people with arthritis, but anyone can be affected by something at one stage or another in our
Yeah.
lives, saying what to come forward to say, well, this is what I need to do my job well. For some people it might be a different keyboard or a different chair. Other people it might be some flexi time or remote working or things like that. But also using sick time when it's needed. I think there's lots of different research to show that some people are quite scared about taking sick time,
Yeah.
when really it is trying to help people feel better. But also, yeah, that overall taking away that fear of judgment is really important.
Yeah. I think that fear of judgment, that phrase is really resonates about how people kind of manage it so that, as you say, there's a fear factor about how others are judging you and so on in work. And I think when we're in uncertain times with our working life, with our economy and so on, we know that people then get very anxious about, hey, am I going to be able to keep my job if I share this? Because, yeah, we're in uncertain times, sadly. Um, is there an issue here? So you've talked a lot about people hiding it, and again, I hear the similarities across into the neurodivergent community, masking, hiding and so on. The very fact that this is invisible, I
Mm.
think causes a lot of issues because I guess it comes back to what you said right at the beginning about younger folks feeling they've got to prove that this is arthritis because it's invisible. Um, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that role that this as a hidden disability plays in the journey for folks living with arthritis.
Yeah, I think it makes it a lot harder because
Mm.
if you were to look at, say, somebody in their 30s, they're coming into work, they might have a family, they might have kids, and on the outside, they look completely fine. You wouldn't know that they're in pain or they're feeling uncomfortable. That's something we find a lot, is that if you people often assume that just because somebody doesn't look unwell or in pain, then they're not. So therefore, they should just be able to get on with everything as normal without complaining. Or and then got somebody older, it's like, well, I've got bad legs, or but you kind of expect that, or they
Yeah,
might be it's easy. Whereas I think it's very hard if you look well and then
yeah,
you're trying to get across how you're feeling, because also with arthritis there might be some weeks where you feel fine or the pain is manageable. It's like your normal level of discomfort, particularly if you've lived with it for a long time. Because the way we look at it, I kind of say to lots of people, it's not, the pain will probably never go away entirely, even with self management. It's about minimizing the impact. And you might get to a point where your pain is manageable. But then in a few weeks, it might not be. It might be through the
yeah,
roof. You might be going through a flare up, or it might be you might have pain in a new area of your body, and then you think, how many times do I have to communicate that to so many people? And in the end, I think people will just get to the point where they think, well, I'll just get on with it the best that I can. But then you kind of feel it's not visible, so there's no way of showing that. You just have to communicate how pain makes you feel, and then you've got other people's standards of what pain is. And
Yes.
again, that's why I always say it's a very individual journey where you shouldn't kind of compare to others that might have arthritis or think that they do.
Yeah, I think this idea, for those of us who don't know a lot about this condition, it's great to hear you share in this way about the fact that there's good weeks, bad weeks, maybe in the same day, an okay morning, but by the afternoon, wow, I'm in a lot of pain now. And I think from the employer's side, we need to have the recognition that one size isn't going to fit all. So I really like what you said earlier that, everyone's journey is going to be slightly different, and that's okay. And we need to figure what that looks like. But also this idea that, okay, maybe we put some things in place for you
Yeah.
or your arthritis. But yeah, you're going to have good days, bad days, good weeks, months, what have you. And we need to be there for you to that agility because, like you say, Leah, I can just imagine somebody thinking, well, this is the fifth time I will have said this. I'm not going to say it again. People are going to judge me. And all those things that you've already shared. So yeah, it gives great insight into what might this lived experience be for those who are living with arthritis. Which brings us nicely on, I think, to the practical things that we can put into place. So we're saying that one size doesn't fit all. We're saying that this can definitely impact on people at many different stages of their life, and it can fluctuate. So
Mm.
how they may be today may not be how they'll be tomorrow or next week, and so on. Um, what are the patterns then of support that you've seen in workplaces that you hear works for folks? As we're trying to think of a arthritis friendly organization, what does that look like, Leah?
Yeah, so it could be lots of things. It could be equipment, making sure a desk is comfortable or a chair is more supportive, or office equipment is appropriate. It could be a standing desk, anything really that makes people feel more comfortable, particularly if you have got a desk-based job. And also, if you're in an office, is there a plan in place perhaps if there's a fire drill to get out of the building? That's really important. If you're, say, on the 10th floor, like that's, and obviously you can't then use the lift if there's a fire, things like that, really. I think a good way to think of it is safety as well. I think making sure that you're as safe as possible. And the more people that know about that, obviously within a trust, whether it's a line manager or close colleagues, you can then it's a way to keep you safe. I think that's a good way of looking into it. It's not just about making sure you've got the right keyboard. It's thinking of it in a whole other light really. You might be able to ask for flexible working, and that could be working from home more often, or coming if you have to commute, coming at a time when it's not as busy on the train, so you're more likely to have space to sit and space to rest and not kind of crushed up with everybody else. Um, but again, with the kind of caveat that some weeks it might not look like that. And I
Yes.
think the more kind of formal support somebody gets, I think it might be hard to get that in the first instance or to bring up the confidence to get that. But we have spoken with people that once they get that in place, it's kind of like a big weight is lifted off their shoulder because they know that they've got people that they can speak with and people that will understand them. And I think with that, it helps kind of bring other people out of the woodwork as well into feeling comfortable. It's not just having the practical support, it's having an inclusive culture and a friendly environment where those can be shared without feeling like you're gonna lose your job. And again, for bigger kind of adjustments, there is also the access to work fund it's just making sure. I think a good way to look at it is finding a way for you to stay in your job. So I kind of flip it on more of the positive side rather than being like, oh, I have arthritis, I might lose my job. Actually, what can be done to help you stay in your job?
Yeah, thank you, Leah. So we're starting to think about the different categories of support. So the physical aspects of supporting someone, which for maybe organizations and managers and so on, that would be automatically what you think of, right? What physically can we put in place? And I really like that idea, and I've not thought of that before about fire drills or even I'm thinking on maybe obviously that's super important, but maybe a lesser on the scale, but still important. How far are you from the coffee machine?
Mm,
If you're on a break, is it going to take you so long to get to that? By the time you've got back to your desk, it
Mhm.
breaks over, or all those very
Mm.
important things about moving around our working space. We've had a question in the chat, and I'd said to you, Leah, that as we go, if we get something quite pertinent from our
Mhm.
wonderful listeners, I'd flag it to you so that we can get into it as well as looking at questions at the end. And I'd use that phrase, arthritis friendly organization, and one of our listeners has said, that when we're thinking about that arthritis friendly
Mm.
organisation, we need also not to use flags on absent management reporting
Mm.
systems. Often HR have, in quotes, a set number of absences that trigger a line manager conversation or further investigation. Not always very inclusive. When you
Mm.
have a condition, which may mean that you have more absences than other
Yeah.
folks because of your medical appointments. Um, and also, we've got here still seeing job application forms which request information around number of sick absences that you've had
Mm.
in the last 12 to 24 months. So this use of
Mm.
being absent through sickness is some sort of benchmark of our performance, but also it's a trigger for other
Mm.
things. Leah, if you'd like to share more on that, please do. But it's very wise words from one of our listeners.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think as well, if you can get very hung up on sick time, I think that can also lead to a lot of kind of infighting in teams of, oh, so and so's been off sick, I'm covering all of their work, and people can get very angry. And I think
Yes.
when you have those kind of triggers and flags, I think it does kind of promote that discomfort, and then that stops people, I think, from taking the time they need to then feel better. So I think it's just whether it's training in the workplace, not just about arthritis, but people have lots of different conditions. It's that those people who are kind of feeling upset that somebody's taking time off at the moment, they might be fine, but in the future they might then need that time. So I think it's having that kind of compassion as well between colleagues, that we're all here to do a job, but some people just might need support to do that well. And who knows, in the future, heaven forbid, that something might change and happen to them where they might need to take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. And it's really thought provoking, and we appreciate the person who's sharing thoughts with us in the chat about this, because I think it's important to think about, what good looks like for our organisations around these issues. I love what you say about training. I'm head of training at
Mm.
Norobox, so this is my passion because I know the difference that it can make to raise awareness. And maybe we'll chat about that a little bit later. But I think this is not a niche issue. You shared that 1 in 6 of us live with this condition. That's a lot of people.
Mm.
So if in our big organizations, there's a lot of our colleagues who live with this condition. Some have shared, some have not. Some feel at this point it's manageable. I don't need to share yet. So
Mm.
whatever that looks like, this is not a minor issue. And
Mm.
I'm wondering again, talking about the links across, when we get it right for an issue like arthritis, I think we're probably getting it. It's a better way to work for all of us, even those who
Yeah,
maybe don't live with this condition,
yeah.
because it means that our employers listening to
Mm.
us, they're meeting us where we're at,
Mm.
taking some of the judgments off. So again, similar patterns with the neurodiversity community. We often say if you work in a neuro-inclusive way, it's great for everyone because it's just a better way to work, and it starts to feel like it just makes perfect sense. Still on the topic of what we can do in work, and please, listeners, please do share more as we go. And I've got my eye on the chat or the Q&A, whatever suits you. Um, what about the collaboration? For those of us who are in big organizations who may have occupational health and so on, we don't always work in that setting, but those of us who do, any words of wisdom about that type of a journey?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely, I think I said as well that if you have that support, whether it's occupational health, it could be an employee assistance program, it could be making the most if you get subsidized gym membership, for example, lots of different things that you can use. And I think it's kind of, I used to speak to someone a few years ago and they said having as many strings to your bow as possible. And one of the things about self-managing your arthritis is you manage it, but you also have people that help support you to manage it. And occupational health might be a way forward for that. And I think when you have those kind of formal levels of support, they can, some people feel there's more kind of gravitas to that. So it's almost like somebody is backing you up really, that you've got
Yes.
somebody on your side to think, well, this is what needs to be put in place, and not kind of seeing that as something that's scary. I think some people will think of occupational health and think of like performance management or
Yeah.
things like that to kind of, are you suitable for your job? But at the same time, you can look at it and think, well, actually, this is what I need to put things in place to help me. And also, it might give some support for line managers as well, because it is difficult if you've never had, if, for example, you've never managed someone with a long-term condition before. Actually, what can, so they're a bit more clued up really on how to support somebody that has arthritis. And again, I think that's where training can really come in, because you can find out how it can be managed, what can people do, but things that you can say and do that can support that person as well. And it's, yeah, everyone will need different levels of support. So again, it's recognizing that each, if you manage, say, three people who have arthritis, each of those three people will need a different approach.
Yeah, and I think that's really key about getting it right. It's knowing that we're individual. And we've had another listener share, sadly, that they've taken hospital appointment days as leave.
Mm,
So annual leave, using it for medical appointments, which yeah, is not where the place that we want to be at with this community. So sorry to hear that. I guess from what you say about occupational health as well, Leo, those types of departments, if we work in organisations that are structured in that way, it's the joined up thinking so that what
yeah.
you have that's occurred with your colleagues in occupational health,
Mm,
as much as you, obviously with your permission, it's getting shared so that everybody's on the same page, I'm
mm,
guessing.
yeah.
Um, which I think leads us nicely on to maybe figuring out the culture and how we
Mm,
communicate policies and so on. I've spoke to lots of people over the years that when they're sharing about their passions and so on, and we start to say, right, what can we do about this? They often start with policy because I
yeah.
think that's the North Star that everything almost cascades from.
Mm,
Um, talk to me then about the role of policy, the importance of culture. We've got folks sharing in the chat about maybe not having that great support. It's almost a cultural issue as well as a very practical one. And the way that we communicate about an issue like arthritis as well.
yeah, I think having those policies in place is really important, like having diversity policies, for example, so you are kind of covered from having a disability, that there is, that you will be supported. I think sometimes there can be blurred lines between what the policy says and kind of how people might, the procedure around that, of whether is that always adhered to. But I think something that is really helpful is having kind of options for people to come forward, kind of ways that an organisation could benefit everyone. So whether that could be a staff survey, I know not everyone feels kind of comfortable in speaking out vocally. Is there anything that could perhaps be changed for the way the staff are, or the culture? Could anything be improved? Some places might have like working groups or panels or a council to kind of bring those views forward. I think it's about having those, that open level of communication, just to kind of make sure that it's benefiting everyone, because nobody wants to work somewhere where you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel able to wear your views. But I think having them, ways that you can share them in different kind of different options is important. So you're not just hearing from those that shout the loudest, or that's really key as well. It's everybody has got something to say. And I think it kind of helps see kind of where policies perhaps aren't working or the procedures aren't matching, like what can be done. And I think it's it's not a criticism, it's about being constructive and looking at how things can be improved.
I like what you say there about people being at the heart of this. And maybe for some organisations, hopefully listening to this, they might think, right, well, 2026 is the year that we're going to really focus on arthritis and get it right. Because as I say, this is a huge issue that impacts a
Mm,
lot of us. How important then is having that lived experience at the
mm,
heart of what we do. Again, a parallel. We talk a lot about this in the neurodivergent community, and a phrase that we often hear for the disability community as a whole is "nothing about us without us." So
yeah.
we are in the conversation. Love to
Mm.
hear your thoughts about where the lived experience sits for policies and how we
Yeah.
get it right.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I think it's so important because how can you make a policy really if you don't know if it's benefiting who's on your team, who's in the organisation? Otherwise, you kind of look at it from a very singular kind of track because if it works for you as the person that's created it, amazing. But actually that's not thinking of other people that will benefit or not benefit from that. So I think lived experience is really important. People might want to there could be a way to, if people don't want to be identified, that's more than fine, but like anonymous case studies, things like that, of how people are. Because I think often if you're just asking conversation, oh, how are you doing? You say, well, I'm fine, get on with it. It's not really a gateway to a more deeper level of chat. But if there a forum where people can voice their views, perhaps is it worth having someone independent to facilitate those, so it doesn't just feel like you're being talked down from the top of what needs to of what will happen, and then you think, well, no one's going to listen anyway. Having that kind of independent outlook as well is that people always have something to say, and it's really important to take what everyone has to say rather than just a select few individuals.
Yeah, thank you. It is so important. And I guess you mentioned it earlier, and I'd said it's one of my passions is training. This is, I think, where that awareness, the understanding comes in. Um, so yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, from your experiences, what that brings with it, that awareness type of training, listening to folks.
Yeah.
Please, over to you, Leah.
I think training's brilliant. So, as an organisation at Arthritis Action, we do offer training to workplaces. For it's the attendance for those is a mix of employers and employees, and the one thing that is in common across all of the sessions that we've delivered is that it's a really great place to air experiences without kind of feeling judged. Everyone's got a safe space to share that because, and then you think, well, I didn't know that somebody else lived with this. It kind of brings people together in a way that obviously is facilitated by an independent person. So we don't know anything about the organisations when we go into them. But what we do then is kind of open up the floor really for people to share their experiences, but also we share our resources and kind of practical things that people can use if they're looking to self-manage their arthritis themselves or they're looking to put a kind of level of support in place for colleagues, and it does that in a safe environment. You've got time to ask questions. I think sometimes if you just do a quick internet search, you can get lost in like misinformation and there's lots of things out there, but actually it just gives a really good overview of what can help, and it's like we see it as a way kind of helping people to put together a toolkit. Not everything I say will benefit everyone there, but it might kind of plant some seeds of, oh, this might be useful in the future, or I'll look into that, or I'll go back to my GP, or I'll look at the assistance program that the company might have. So it's just opening that conversation, perhaps if it didn't feel like a safe enough space to do that before.
Yeah, that's a great service. And we will be sharing information about the charity. And I know then folks can reach out and begin those conversations with you guys. And thank you for all the service that you do for this community. It sounds like you've still got a long journey ahead. Great progress, but still a journey to go on to raise awareness and what good looks like for,
Yeah.
as we were saying, an arthritis friendly organisation to impact on folks' lives in a good way. As we round up the conversation, then, Thea, I'm thinking about how we amplify those lived experiences, voices. I love what you say. Not everybody's confident enough to share.
Mm,
So we need to think as an employer, as an organization, okay, how can we listen to voices of people who don't necessarily want
mm,
to stand up in front of everybody and share or what have
mm,
you? So I like that because that's great realistic advice because we're not all there yet. So thank you for sharing that. How do we make sure then with those lived experiences that people feel confident? And also, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So, people have shared, which takes a lot of courage actually.
mm.
How do we as the organization show that we've listened?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because it's all very well saying, oh yeah, let us hear your views, and then you don't kind of do anything about them.
Yeah,
I think a good way of showing that you've listened is particularly if people have individual concerns, going up to that person and saying, can anything be put in place on an individual basis, but also looking at wider policy or procedure, whether that's remote work equipment, asking people if they need any equipment. It could be different levels of things.
Yeah,
Um, Asking people if they have, for example, someone mentioned about sick days, like being perhaps more delicate about that and not just kind of putting a red flag on that if somebody's had a certain number of days. It's about being a bit more compassionate and just showing that things are slowly, that obviously it's not all going to change overnight. And I think that's obviously not expecting people to do that. But I think it's about, is there a procedure that needs to change? Can any of the policies be edited? Is there more flexibility for people if they need it?
yeah, thank you. And I think that flexible working can really be useful for the arthritis community in terms of if you've had a lousy morning and you know that you're in pain, but you happily maybe it dissipates and you feel okay by the afternoon, it's to maybe
Mm.
be able to be flexible with your hours that
Yeah,
day and have some sort of agreement in place in that way. And get creative really of how we work with folks as much as we can. To thank you, it's really insightful. I've got one eye on the time. So any other questions for those who are listening live, please do pop them in the chat or the Q&A box. So I'm looking at there. But Leah, as we round up the chat, and I'll come to you if we get any more thoughts, um, I'd love to hear your thoughts about what next then. We're just at the beginning of a new year, wonderful 2026. Where are you guys heading then at Arthritis Action? Talk to me about some of the great work that you guys do in the charity.
yeah, thank you. So, as a charity, we have lots of different services that kind of start from January and run throughout the year. So we have self-management events, we have self-management courses, we've recently released a new series of our podcast. We'll have webinars. So there's lots going on, and we always say keep an eye on our website and sign up to our newsletter. That's a really good way of kind of finding out what's going on. If you did have any other questions, you're more than welcome to contact us. If you're interested in presentations, that's something we can help with. So I'd say for a small charity, we're very busy,
Yeah,
but we are hopefully, like, we're going to be working on our new strategy for the next few years as well. So it's an
yeah.
exciting time.
Well, we wish you all the best and more power to you guys because the work you do is so needed. There's still a long way to go to raise awareness. Do you feel optimistic about where we're heading around arthritis? Are we slowly getting there where people are understanding these issues, trying to figure out what good looks like? Do you feel positive about where we're heading?
Yes, I think so. I think there's definitely, particularly with lots of digital services as well, ways to have new resource, like different resources on different platforms. I think there is something for everyone, and that's, I think, slowly becoming more and more accessible. So I think, yeah, I think we're heading in a good direction. But again, like, it won't be an overnight change, but kind of slowly but surely, it's just about reaching people and raising that awareness. And if we can just help one extra person realise something, then that's fantastic.
Yeah, it is fantastic. And you guys are fantastic. So again, thank you for your service. And Nora Box stand with you. This is why we wanted to have this conversation. We've had a chat, we've had a comment through. Somebody shared that they recently returned to work after knee surgery. My
Mm.
colleagues have been very supportive with me working from home for the moment. So that's brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, we see that
Mm.
we know we're not there yet, but it's great. And thank you to the person for sharing that. But slowly, hopefully, but surely, we're starting to see the ripple effect of the changes that we would like to see for this
Mm.
community. As I say, Arthritis Action, you guys are making big impact in making some of those changes happen. So thank you. And thank you to all of those you who are listening, either live or on catch up. Please know that you're not on your own. We talk a lot at Nora Box about finding your tribe and about feeling connected, and this is certainly an issue that, yeah, there's a community here for those of you who are listening, wherever you may be on your journey. You're not on your own. So Leah, thank you. And you guys, as I say, more power to you for the great work that you do. But as we start to say goodbye to folks, I don't know if you want to say a few closing words before we end this session.
I think, it was great just to share more about arthritis, and I hope that the resources that we have and the information can be of use to you. So thank you very much for having me.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. And thank you for everybody who's listening. Now, this has been a great conversation. We've got lots of thank yous in the chat. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. But we want to leave you in a really good place. So, Arthritis Action have been very kind. Have sent Box lots of information that you will receive. Please do, as Leah says, go and check out their website for you, your family, whoever you want to find out more about. And please know that you are not on your own as well. There is support out there. You can reach out to us at Box, but also the wonderful as well, Arthritis Action. Leah, thank you so much. A wonderful chat. I've learned a lot, and I actually went into this chat thinking, yeah, I think I know quite a bit about arthritis. I've also learned, which is wonderful. And thank you, everybody. What a great way to start our year with another great how-to episode. We hope that you will join us next time around. Let's keep talking about these important issues. Thank you, everyone, and take care. Goodbye for now.
Bye.